My name is Alan Pitt, and I'd like to talk to you about mihospital, a new IT solution that we've released here at St. Joe's the Barrow. And I actually believe this isn't so much an application, but a cultural revolution. So here's the story of my hospital. My mother-in-law, seen on the picture, was admitted to my own hospital and unfortunately had a less than optimal outcome. She survived, I survived, and we went forward. I went back to the hospital administrators and I said, look, I just don't want this to happen again. Tell me what process you're going to change, what policy and procedure you're going to change based on this event. And so he said, I'll get back to you. 2 weeks went by, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. The administrator never came back to me. And finally I went to him and said, I'm now your worst nightmare. I'm the disenfranchised family member. It seemed to me like you didn't care about my concerns. And when I asked him what methodology he had to follow up with me, he basically said, Dr. Pitt, I have nothing for you. I'm sorry, this shouldn't have happened, but I have nothing. And really, in terms of most hospital admissions, this is what we face today. Patients are admitted to the luxury liner. They're fed, they're bathed, they're given activities, but once discharged, they're sent off on a rowboat to look for the island on themselves. They're kind of forgotten, and in fact, the entire admission is often lost. There's no real place to record that, and the patient is left to fend for themselves. And this isn't good for patients, and it's not good for hospitals. Hospitals don't really want patients to be ignored over time. They want them to come back and view the hospital as a place for care. Well, fortunately for me and my co-sponsor Julie Ward, Lloyd Dean's Greenlight Challenge came along. And Lloyd Dean, who's CEO of Catholic Healthcare West, asked for innovative projects, and he said, if they're awarded, I'll fund them, and if they're successful, I'll try to take them throughout the enterprise. Well, notably, patient satisfaction, my problem, ties directly to hospital revenue. And so dissatisfied patients end not coming back to your hospital for care. So I thought I could build a hospital CRM, a customer relations management software program, where hospitals could build a relationship with their patients. I thought I could do this based on an architecture that we've used for diseases here at the Barrow St. Joe's for about a decade. We've admitted roughly 50,000 patients with 100 million transactions where we collect information around a patient that is shared with an advocate. This information builds over time, and then the advocate matches patients with researchers for projects. This is a sustainable business model. I thought if we could replace a disease with a hospital, we might be able to do something that would be different, something that would allow that relationship to be built. I want to emphasize that this is not a vehicle for care, but rather collaboration between a hospital and their patients. We're looking to gather information to proactively address concerns, not necessarily primarily care for these patients. So it has a really simple model. Basically, on enrollment, a patient is admitted, we gather their profile, we ask them not only why they're here, but a little bit about things that they may care about. You may be admitted for CHF, but your wife has diabetes or your child has asthma. And we collect all this information. At discharge, the nurse speaks a little bit about your admission, what happened to you, and maybe some personal information that may be valuable. So Alan might have had a bad admission because his spouse was also sick, or he didn't get along with a particular nurse. On discharge, this activates the 48-hour phone call, which today is used for reinforcement of medications and appointments to follow up. But we also ask additional questions about how we did. If we did really well during this admission, we want to know about it. And if we did not so well, we want to know about that too. And ultimately, we want to go back to the patient at a time later and understand, was the patient readmitted for the same problem or a new problem to us or our competitor? We want to gather that value-based care or ACO type care. So this is the admission form. We're basically asking some information about you and also things that you care about down at the bottom, because we want to be able to proactively address those concerns. On admission, we basically say what happened to you, some procedures, and there's a place for comments. This is very important because the nurses know particular information about the patient and that admission that needs to move forward. And this is a very important part of nursing that can't really be taken out to the unit assistant, for instance. The nurses know if the patient had a bad stay or had concerns or was particularly anxious, and we ask our nurses to fill this piece out as well. After the discharge, there's a reminder sheet that comes up that tells the follow-up nurse who to call, and and it also gives them information about that patient when they call. They ask for 3 calls to be made, and after that the patient to roll off, um, and it allows them to do that in a personalized way. If the nurse hears that something was less than optimal, then they can basically note that area, and quickly a message is sent to that manager so that they can make an improvement in process. They can also talk to the patient about that concern and hear more if they wish to. There is an opportunity to call out employees who've been particularly compassionate during the stay, and I think just as we often carry a stick to try to make people do things, we also have to reward them when they go above and beyond. So the application calls that out as well in a frequent automated way. We can know who's being called, how often calls are being made. We can get a sense of how that process of follow-up is working. We can begin to understand the different business units of the hospital. It may be that admitting is short-staffed and patients are having a bad experience there, or radiology is less than optimal because they don't have enough transporters. We begin to understand what's working and what's not working. We can understand the application and its implications against routine metrics such as Avatar or Press-Ganey. These typically reach the patient at 6 to 8 weeks, and usually only a minority of patients fill out the Avatar or HCAP survey. We're leveraging a personal touch with this patient with the 48-hour follow-up call. Ultimately, what we found was, although the nurses initially viewed this as just another application, just another thing that they had to do, they began to see this as something that allowed them to do what they went into nursing for in the first place, which was build a relationship with their patient, add to care over time. And in fact, unsolicited, they wrote this poem and sang a jingle about it, which you can actually see on YouTube under My Hospital Jingle. But the poem is very meaningful to me. Make the call, hear it all, if it's good or bad. A patient's voice is all we need to make a change we believe. Strive for the best, we cannot rest, finding ways to improve our care. One call can change it all. And this was written by Faith Overstreet, one of the nurses on the 7th floor. What hospital would not want this for their culture? To me, this was the most important thing that came out of this entire project. And in fact, this is why I believe this will scale. For the future, we look to take this beyond the current floors that it's been deployed on. We're using it on patients every day, but it needs to go to more floors, more hospitals. We'd like to see incorporation of discharge instructions so that when that follow-up call is made, it can be even more personal. And finally, I believe there's an opportunity to not only leverage the patient profile after they leave us, but also during the stay, because there can be meaningful events during the admission. Again, I want to thank you for your time. This has been Alan Pitt. For me, this is a new bar in medical IT. Does your app have a jingle? Take care.